My fiancé's first love hit a pedestrian and fled the scene. In the early hours of the morning, Finloo called me down to the underground garage and handed me a blood-stained coat. He said, "Ivy, the car is registered under your name. Turn yourself in. You'll only spend a few years in prison at most. I'll marry you once you get out." I stared at his face. For the first time, I wondered if an intelligence test was required even for a business marriage. I asked, "If you love her so much, why don't you go instead?" He fell silent. He always clammed up when faced with questions he could not answer. His first love, Thea Shea, clutched her chest and wept. "Sister, I'm in poor health. I would never survive in prison. Please have mercy on me." I burst out laughing. What did her poor health have to do with me? Did I look like someone who had lost her mind? It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and Finloo had called me 13 times. When I finally answered, his voice trembled. "Ivy Shen, come to the garage at Yunlu Bay. Don't tell anyone." Yunlu Bay was a property under my name. To be precise, it was a premarital residence my father bought for me when we got engaged. Finloo rarely came here. He complained that it was too far from his company, that the decor felt cold, and that I kept too many potted plants around. For him to show up here today out of the blue, nothing good could come of it. I threw on a coat and headed downstairs. The maid looked worried. "Miss, shall I call the driver?" "No need." I grabbed my phone and a portable voice recorder. One advantage of a business marriage was that there was little affection between the two sides, so you could stay as guarded as a fortress. The moment the elevator doors opened, the stench of blood drifted over. Finloo stood beside my black off-road vehicle, blood staining the cuffs of his white shirt. Thea Shea cowered behind him, her face as pale as whitewash. The front of the car was dented and the right headlight was shattered. A bloodied coat lay on the ground. Finloo picked it up and held it out to me, his voice tight with urgency. "Ivy, something terrible has happened." I stepped back half a pace. "Keep it away. Don't touch me." He looked stunned. "This isn't the time to throw a fit." "I'm not throwing a fit. I'm afraid you'll plant the evidence on me." Tears welled up in Thea Shea's eyes instantly. She cried so profusely that I half wanted to build a dam to hold back her tears. "Miss Shen, I truly had no choice." A cat suddenly darted across the road and I panicked and hit someone. I wanted to get out of the car to check, but I was too scared. Finn was terrified too. I turned to Finloo. "Where is the injured person?" Finloo swallowed hard. "Someone has already called the police and an ambulance." "So you two ran away?" Thea Shea's shoulders shook as she cried. "My health is fragile and I cannot bear such shocks." "Sister, will you please help me?" I asked. "How exactly do you want me to help?" Finloo seemed relieved that I was willing to listen and spoke right away. "The car is under your name and the surveillance can only capture the license plate. Turn yourself in, and say you fled in a panic after hitting the person." He spoke more and more smoothly. "The Shen family has a strong legal team. The victim isn't dead, so it will only end with compensation. You'll serve a few years at most and I will wait for you." I stayed silent for 3 seconds after he finished speaking, mainly because I didn't want to laugh right away and seem cruel. "Finloo, listen to what you're saying. Can any normal human being talk like this?" He frowned. "Ivy, Thea Shea is sick. She would die in prison. Would I live forever if I went in?" He fell silent again. He always went mute when he could not find a proper reply. I unlocked my phone. "I'm calling the police." Thea Shea let out a scream and lunged forward to grab my wrist. "No, sister, I beg you." Her fingernails nearly dug into my flesh. I shook her off and fixed my gaze on Finloo. "If you love her that much, you go to prison in her place." The garage fell dead silent. Finloo's lips moved, but no sound came out. I laughed. "What's wrong? Your courage ran out at the last second?" Thea Shea looked up at him, and the look in her eyes gradually changed. The next second, she grabbed his sleeve while crying and said something that left me utterly astonished. "Finn, you're so kind. You'll definitely save me, won't you?" Finloo stiffened all over. I leaned against the car door, almost applauding at how these two ridiculous people kept passing the buck to each other. Tears clung to her eyelashes, and her voice sounded weak and airy. "I've been frail since I was a child. The doctor said I can't endure hardship. Prisons are freezing cold and the food is terrible. I would never survive there. She coughed twice in a deliberate, rhythmic manner. I know Miss Shen dislikes me and hates me for taking you away from her. So she will never help me. I raised my hand. Hold on. I don't hate you. Thea Shah froze in surprise. I said earnestly, if you really take Finlu off my hands, I'll actually thank you. Finlu's face turned dark. Ivy Shen, don't shout. I'm not going to prison for her no matter what you say. Seeing that I would not be swayed, Thea Shah shook Finlu's arm repeatedly. Brother, you promised to protect me for the rest of my life. You said you would give me anything as long as I came back to you. Conflict flickered across Finlu's eyes. I knew that look all too well. Every time Thea Shah cried, his sharp business mind turned into mush. Finlu and I got engaged purely for a business partnership between our families. I have to admit, I was once foolish enough to be attracted to him. He had a handsome appearance and decent capabilities. He always dressed impeccably in public and behaved politely when discussing business with my parents. I was young back then, mistaking good looks for good character. Everything changed when Thea Shah returned to the country. Finlu's logic became muddled every single day. When Thea Shah had a fever, he abandoned an important meeting to stay by her side. When she craved cakes from the south of the city, he made his driver queue for 3 hours to buy them. When she posted on social media saying she felt lonely, he rushed over with medicine at 3 in the morning. I had once suggested calling off the engagement. Back then he said, business. Marriages rely on decency. Don't put our parents in an awkward position. Now that he was asking me to take the blame for a crime, he had long tossed that so-called decency down the drain. Thea Shah sobbed uncontrollably, I will really die. Finlu finally looked up at me. Ivy, this all started because of me. I raised an eyebrow. Then you go. He took a deep breath. I'll go. I clapped my hands. Bravo. Mr. Liu, what great devotion. Finlu's face turned livid. I'm just taking responsibility. Don't speak to me in that sarcastic tone. Fine. But I'm informing both sets of parents and calling off the engagement right now. He stared at me sharply. Ivy Shen, what do you mean? Exactly what it sounds like. He frowned. We'll hold the wedding after I get out. I stared at him in shock. How absurd could a person be? He planned to go to prison for his first love, yet still expected me to wait for him and marry him afterward. This was not just being love-struck. It was sheer foolishness. I dialed my father's number and turned on the speakerphone. Dad, I'm calling off the engagement with Finlu. Finlu stepped forward, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. I moved back until I stood under a surveillance camera and smiled at him. Take another step and I'll scream for robbery. My father's voice turned cold instantly on the line. Ivy Shen, what happened? I held up the voice recorder. Listen to this recording and you'll find out. I had barely started playing the audio when rapid footsteps echoed from the garage entrance. Finlu's parents had arrived. Mrs. Liu wore her pajamas with a coat thrown over them, her face deathly pale. Mr. Liu glanced at the damaged car, his voice shaking. Who was driving? Thea Shah buried herself in Finlu's arms, crying. Finlu instinctively shielded her. Father, mother, I'll handle this. Mr. Liu let out a bitter laugh. You'll handle it? How? By making Ivy Shen take the blame for you two? Finlu pressed his lips together and said nothing. There he went again. When he stayed silent like this, he looked hollow and utterly hypocritical. Mrs. Liu leaned against the wall, her eyes filled with disappointment. Fin, did you really ask Ivy to take the blame? Finlu lowered his voice. Mother, I had no other choice. Thea Shah is in poor health, I cut in. Auntie, he had plenty of choices. He even arranged for me to serve a few years in prison and marry him once I was released. Mrs. Mia Liu nearly lost her balance. My mother rushed over next. She pulled me behind her and checked me over carefully. Did she hurt you? No, thank goodness. My mother turned to Finlu, her tone eerily gentle. Young Master Liu, my daughter has never spent a day in prison, nor does she have any desire to do so. My father arrived right after her, accompanied by our family lawyer. Finlu finally realized how serious the situation was. Uncle, auntie, I will give the Shen family a proper explanation. My father fixed his eyes on him. The engagement is off. Finlu's expression darkened. I refuse. It doesn't matter whether you agree or not. I pulled a copy of the engagement agreement out of my bag. It states clearly that either party has the right to terminate the agreement unilaterally if the other is involved in serious illegal activities. Thea Shea grew anxious. Miss Shenfin only acted out of deep love for me. He meant no harm. I looked at her. You hit someone and fled, and he's willing to take the fall for you. So you two are truly a perfect match. One slams on the gas pedal and the other tramples on the law. Mr. Lu closed his eyes. Call the police. Fin Lu spoke up suddenly. No need. I'll turn myself in. Mrs. Ma. Lu stared at him in shock. Have you lost your mind? A flash of joy crossed Thea Shia's face, which she quickly hid by lowering her head. I saw it clearly. Beneath her delicate and weak appearance lay nothing but scheming. Fin Lu turned to leave. Mr. Lu blocked his way. Tell me the truth first. Who was really driving the car? I was. Are you sure? I'm sure. Thea Shea threw her arms around him, crying. Brother, it's all my fault. I will remember what you've done for me for the rest of my life. Finlu looked at her, and there was even a hint of emotion in his eyes. I could not help but laugh at the pair of them. So being love-struck could also be self-destructive. They were throwing themselves into the trash can of their own accord. My father told the lawyer to handle all the paperwork for terminating the engagement. Before my mother took me home, she whispered, Does the car have any footage? I nodded. Yes. I bought this car as a birthday gift for myself. It was equipped with top-tier safety features. The dashcam footage was synced to the cloud, and the vehicle also had a driver recognition system. Finlu thought he could make me take the blame just because the car was registered under my name. He never knew that when I spend money, I always prioritize protection, including protection against foolish antics like this. Back home, I logged into the cloud backend. The moment the video loaded, I saw Thea Shia sitting in the driver's seat. And there was another unexpected person in the passenger seat. It was Fin Lu. He had claimed earlier that he had been called over by a phone call and was not in the car at all. The truth told a completely different story. In the footage, Thea Shea was driving my car, while Fin Lu leaned back in the passenger seat, holding a cup of milk tea. Thea Shea said in a sweet, coquettish voice, Brother, don't I look cuter driving than Miss Shen? Fin Lu smiled and ruffled her hair. She only drives by the rules. It's boring. I watched on with a blank expression. The timestamp on the video was 11:47 at night. They had just left a club. Thea Shia had been drinking, yet Fin Lu did nothing to stop her and even handed her the car keys. The in-vehicle recognition system alerted. The driver may be intoxicated. Do not start the vehicle. Thea Shah patted the steering wheel. It's telling me what to do now. Finlu said, Ignore it. Just drive slowly. I nearly crushed the mouse in my grip. At 12:19 in the early morning, the car drove down a narrow road. A delivery rider rode out from an intersection. Thea Shah screamed and swerved sharply, and the car crashed straight into him. The rider was thrown a long distance. The system automatically dialed the emergency number, but Finlu reached out and canceled the call. Thea Shia burst into tears. What do we do? Will I go to prison? Finlu's face turned ashen. Let's leave first. The car is registered under Ivy Shen's name. Thea Shea reminded him. Finlu fell silent for a few seconds. Then let her take the blame. I let out a laugh when the video ended. The laughter faded quickly, replaced by disgust. I made 3 backups of the footage. One went to our family lawyer, one was saved on an encrypted drive, and the last I sent to my elder brother. My brother called me 5 minutes later, his voice full of anger right from the start. How shameless can Finlu be? He's nothing but a monster in human skin. How is the injured person? I asked. I checked. He's still in emergency treatment, and his family can't afford the medical bills. I paused for a moment. Pay the fees first using an anonymous account. I could stand aside and watch their farce, but I would never let an innocent person suffer because of these 2 lunatics. The lawyer asked if I wanted to hand over the evidence to the police right away. I thought it over. Not yet. Finlu had already turned himself in. Once a person starts lying, every subsequent word becomes a rope that ties them up tighter and tighter. I wanted Mr. and Mrs. Lu to see with their own eyes just how despicable their proud son truly was. The next morning, right after we released the statement calling off the engagement, my phone was flooded with messages. Some praised me for being rational. Some hailed Finlu as a devoted lover. Others sighed over how lucky Thea Shea was to have a man willing to bear everything for her. I read through the comments and took a sip of milk. The online community was full of talented people who really ought to work as scriptwriters. At noon I received a message from Thea Shah. "Miss Shen, I need to meet you." She added a pitiful emoji at the end. I replied, "Come over." Half an hour later, she walked into my living room wearing a white dress and high heels. The feeble, dying look she'd put on the night before was completely gone. She sat down across from me and said something that made me think she belonged on a reality show. "Miss Shen, Fin truly loves me." She held her teacup, her voice sickly sweet. "I know you're upset, but feelings cannot be forced." I glanced at her heels. She'd claimed to be in poor health just last night, yet today she strutted around in 8-centimeter high heels. What a medical miracle. "So what are you here for?" "Stop pestering him." She lifted her chin slightly. "He's willing to go to prison for me." "You will never have a love like that in your life." I nodded. "You're right. I never had his love." Unable to pick up on my sarcasm, she thought I had conceded and grew even more complacent. "He called me before turning himself in and told me to wait for him. He said he will marry me once he gets out." "Earlier you told me to stop pestering him," I pointed out. She faltered for a second, then started crying again. "I have no choice. Miss Shen, you have your parents, wealth, and a way out. I have only Fin." I asked her sincerely, "Do you still have a valid driver's license?" Thea Shia's face darkened. "What do you mean?" "Just asking. Your driving style is quite memorable." Her hand trembled, spilling tea all over her dress. "You have evidence, don't you?" I smiled but gave no answer. She stood up abruptly. "Ivy Shen, don't talk nonsense. Fin has already confessed, and the police will believe him." "Why are you so nervous?" "I'm not." She raised her voice, dropping her sickly weak act entirely. I set down my teacup. "Thea Shah, if you really love Fin Lu, you should stand by his side and face the consequences together. You cried for him to save you last night, yet you come here to show off today. That's simply immoral." Her face twisted with rage. "You know nothing. I'm frail and cannot endure hardship. Fin chooses to protect me, which proves his love." "What do you love about him exactly?" She blurted out without hesitation. "He's rich, of course." A porcelain cup shattered at the entrance of the living room. Thea Shah spun around in shock. Mrs. Lu stood there, her face deathly pale, with Mr. Lu right behind her, his eyes cold and stern. I held up my phone. "Uncle, Auntie, I recorded everything you just heard." Panic washed over Thea Shah. "Uncle, Auntie, please listen to me. I was just scared and talking recklessly." Mr. Lu said coldly, "Were you also just scared when you hit someone and fled the scene last night?" Her legs went weak and she nearly collapsed. Mrs. Lu walked up to her, her voice shaking. "Fin took the blame for you, and now you come here to gloat in front of Ivy?" Thea Shah shook her head. "Auntie, Fin did it of his own free will." Those words drained the last trace of warmth from Mrs. Lu's eyes. I slid a tablet across the table towards Mr. Lu. "This contains in-car footage, driving data and collision alerts. Both of their faces are clearly captured." Mr. Lu's fingers trembled as he tapped to play the video. Thea Shia lunged forward in an attempt to snatch the device, but our bodyguard blocked her firmly. The living room fell dead silent the moment Fin Lu's words "then let her take the blame" echoed from the speaker. After watching the video, Mr. Lu turned and walked away. Thea Shah took 2 steps to chase after him. "Uncle." Without looking back, he said, "Head to the police station." Fin Lu had been detained at the police station for more than 10 hours. He insisted stubbornly that he had been behind the wheel. That was until Mr. Lu submitted the video evidence. The police made him watch the in-car recording again. He stayed completely silent for 2 full minutes after it ended. Then he asked, "Where did this video come from?" "A Miss Shen provided it," the officer replied. Fin Lu's face turned ashen on the spot. Thea Xia kept crying as she was led away. She rambled about her poor health, her aching heart, and how she could not stand the simple boxed meals at the station. The police officer asked her, "Was your heart fine when you drove away after hitting the person?" She fell silent immediately. My brother laughed so hard he banged the table while recounting the story to me. She put on quite a show, crying like her tears could get her a lighter sentence. What about Fin Lu? He's been released, but he still has to answer for covering up the truth and giving false testimony. Don't worry, he won't get off scot-free. I let out a quiet hum. In the afternoon, Fin Lu showed up at my house. He stood at the gate, his suit crumpled and stubble covering his jaw, looking utterly disheveled. "Ivy Shen, why did you show the evidence to my parents?" I was sitting in the yard eating watermelon, not even bothering to lift my head. "Because they are decent people." His eyes turned red. "You knew how disappointed they would be with me. Did you not think about that when you made your plans?" He lapsed into silence once again. I poked at the watermelon with a fork. "Fin Lu, you could write a book someday. Title it Mute, Whenever Trouble Arises." He took a deep breath. "I only wanted to save Thea Xia. You could have called for an ambulance instead of driving away." I panicked at that moment. "You were calm enough to come up with a scheme to make me take the blame. Your mind worked perfectly fine then." His face paled. Mr. and Mrs. Lu arrived shortly afterwards. Mr. Lu looked at him and spoke in a calm tone. "You don't need to come to the company starting tomorrow." Fin Lu looked up sharply. "Father, the company cannot afford a successor like you. I only made one mistake." Mrs. Lu could no longer hold back her emotions. "One mistake? You tried to force your fiancé to take the fall, lied to cover for Thea Xia, and fled after a hit and run. Every choice you made has made me see you in a whole new light." Fin Lu grew anxious. "Mother, I am your son." Tears welled in Mrs. Lu's eyes. "It is precisely because you are my son that I feel such a failure, Mr. Lu pulled out a document. "Your position is suspended and the trust for your shares is put on hold. All supplementary cards and vehicles under your name are also deactivated." Fin Lu froze in place. I quietly took another bite of watermelon. This real-life drama was far more entertaining than the fruit in my hand. Fin Lu turned to me. "Are you satisfied now, Ivy Shen?" "Not really. You still owe the injured person an apology." He gritted his teeth. "I will apologize." Mrs. Lu took a thick booklet out of her bag and handed it to Mr. Lu. I glanced at the cover, a health management plan for advanced stage pregnancy preparation. Fin Lu saw it too, and his expression crumbled completely. "Mrs. Me?" Lu wiped the corners of her eyes. "Since we've failed to raise this child well, your father and I have decided to have another heir." Fin Lu broke down on the spot. "Mother, have you lost your minds? How old are the two of you?" Mrs. Lu looked straight at him. "We'd rather try that than let you take over the family business." I could not hold back my laughter. Fin Lu glared at me fiercely. "What are you laughing at? I'm happy for the Lu family. You'll have a more capable heir in the future." Mr. Lu coughed and struggled to maintain a stern demeanor. "This is none of your concern. Focus on sorting out your own mess first." Fin Lu was about to argue when his phone rang. He checked the caller ID, which was from the company's board office. Standing close by, I heard the cold, formal voice on the line. "Mr. Lu, the board has issued an emergency notice. All your approval privileges are revoked as of today. Our staff will pack up your personal belongings from the office and send them to you." A vein throbbed on Fin Lu's temple. "Who gave you the authority to do this?" There was a short pause on the line, and no reply came. Mr. Lu cut in directly. "I did." Fin Lu's knuckles turned white as he tightened his grip on the phone. My mother leaned over and whispered to me. "Was he ever actually competent at work?" I thought for a moment. He did get things done, mostly by leaving others to clean up his messes. Even my father let out a rare chuckle. Fin Lu's expression darkened further. "Our two families have cooperated for years. Do you really have to laugh at my misfortune?" "I'm not laughing at you." He relaxed slightly. I went on. I'm just watching a drama series. This episode has quite a dramatic plot. Mrs. Lu massaged her temples. Finn, go home now. Don't humiliate yourself any longer at Ivy's place. He was still filled with resentment and could not help defending Thea Shaw. Thea was just scared. She isn't inherently bad. Mr. Lu finally lost his patience. Is she good at heart when she fled after hitting someone? Is she good at heart when she let you confess to a crime you didn't commit? Is she good at heart when she came here to show off? Hit with 3 consecutive questions, Finn Lu fell silent again. I've finally found one good thing about him. He really cherishes his throat. Finn Lu stormed off in a rage. Back in the day, he'd go out with an assistant driving, a chauffeur opening the door, and bodyguards clearing the way. Today his supplementary cards were frozen, and his car keys had been taken away. He stood by the road trying to hail a ride, but the app told him his balance was insufficient. The security camera outside my house captured the whole thing, and I felt so satisfied watching it. Miss, how did he leave in the end? Shared bike. Can young Master Lu even ride one? He rode 3 meters and crashed into the flower bed. The maid laughed so hard she could barely hold on to her spatula. Even better, right after he crashed. Marketing accounts had already edited the video into a hilarious clip and spread it everywhere. The caption read, "Rich young master rides for love, makes it 3 meters to the bushes." The comments below were all in the same vein. Is this the legendary charge for love? Charge failed, captured by the flower bed. His white moonlight should give him a Best Charge award when she gets out of prison. My brother sent me a screenshot of the comments and asked, "Want me to buy a trending topic for this?" I replied, "No need. The people can do it themselves." My father watched the trending topic in silence for a long time before saying, "Thank God we called off the engagement so quickly." My mother nodded. Any later, and the madness would have seeped into our family register. Things moved even faster for Thea Shaw. Drunk driving, hit and run, and attempting to frame someone else. Her lawyer said the sentence would not be light. The injured man pulled through, but his leg was badly hurt and would require a long recovery. When his family found out I'd anonymously paid his medical bills, they sent me a thank you letter through their lawyer. I told the lawyer to pass on that I just wanted him to get well. The first time Finn Lu went to the hospital to apologize, the injured man's mother chased him out with a broom. She yelled clearly and sharply, "Did you rich people donate your brains for tax deductions? You hit someone and tried to make your fiancé take the blame?" A passerby filmed him standing at the hospital entrance and the video went viral. The comment section was in hysterics. The rich young master's devotion. White moonlight hits someone. Fiancé goes to jail. He just frowns. This lovesick fool should be boiled in a pot. Run, Miss Shen. Get as far away from this inhuman creature as possible. Finn Lu called me, his voice exhausted. "Can you get people to take down all that stuff online?" I asked. "With what?" He fell silent. I kindly reminded him, "Finn Lu, you have no company, no cards, no car, and you can't even ride a shared bike properly. Drop the CEO act tool. Throw your back out." He said quietly, "Ivy, I know I was wrong. Save that for the police and the victim's family. Do we really have to end up like this?" I laughed. "Our engagement is over. At best, you're just a case study for me now." I heard his heavy breathing on the other end. I was about to hang up when he said suddenly, "Thea Shaw has been sentenced." Thea Shaw got 2.5 years. On the day the verdict was announced, Finn Lu stood outside the courthouse, looking completely haggard. Thea Shaw called out to him as she was being led away, "Finn, you have to wait for me." Finn Lu nodded, his eyes red. "I will." I was sitting in the car and nearly choked on my water. My brother was beside me, scrolling through the news on his tablet. "He's still waiting? What for? Her amazing hit-and-run skills? The free room and board in prison? For love, I guess. That love sure costs a lot." Finn Lu's miserable life officially began that day. The Lu family cut off all his financial support. His former friends, hearing he'd left the Lu Corporation, rushed to distance themselves from him. He tried to start his own business, but his business plan was about as detailed as an elementary schooler's spring outing itinerary. At the funding pitch, he talked for half an hour about passion and dreams. When the investors asked about his revenue model, he fell silent again. I heard the investors ended the meeting early. With nowhere else to go, Finlu rented a tiny apartment. He couldn't bear to leave Thea Shah, so he started sending her money every month. But he had no income, so he took manual labor jobs. His first job was sorting packages at a logistics warehouse. He showed up on his first day wearing leather shoes, and got blisters after half an hour of carrying boxes. His supervisor told him to change into work shoes, but he frowned and said, "These shoes don't match my clothes." The supervisor replied, "Then your clothes don't match the salary." He put up with it. His second job was carrying vegetables in a hotel kitchen. It was summer, and sweat dripped off his chin as he hauled crates of potatoes. A coworker asked him, "Hey, what did you do before this?" He was silent for a long time before saying, "I ran a company." The coworker looked impressed. "Property management?" He nearly fainted from anger. I didn't want to know any of this, but Finlu kept messaging me every few days. "I made 280 yuan today. Thea Shah will be out in 2 years. She'll understand what I did for her." I read them all, but never replied. Then he sent a photo of his hand, covered in calluses. "Ivy, I was so wrong before. I never knew how hard it is for ordinary people to make money." I replied with one word, "Oh." He fell silent again for 3 days. Those 3 days he was probably waiting for me to soften up. But any softness I'd had for him had burned to ashes the night in the garage. On the 4th day he tried a different approach and sent me a box of mangoes. I'm allergic to mangoes. The delivery note said, "Ivy's favorite fruit." I stared at those words for a long time, realizing he'd never even remembered my allergies. My lawyer, Theodore G., happened to be dropping off some documents. When he saw the box of mangoes, he told someone to take it away. "Give it to the staff break room. Don't waste it." I asked him, "How did you know I'm allergic?" He set the documents on the table. "The first time you came to the firm to sign the retainer, the assistant asked what you wanted to drink, and you said no mango sparkling water." I froze for a second. Someone who truly cares about you doesn't have to act like they remember the little things. Finlu had acted devoted for years, but he couldn't even get his lines right. Thea Shah wasn't idle in prison either. She sent messages to Finlu telling him to buy her skincare products, nutritional supplements, and send money to her account. Finlu did everything she asked. When my brother heard about it, he gave the perfect assessment. He went from a walking ATM to a manual slot machine. 2.5 years flew by. On the day Thea Shah was released, Finlu took the day off, bought a bouquet of roses, and even put on the suit he'd worn to our engagement dinner. But the suit no longer fit him the way it used to, and it had lost all its former elegance. He stood outside the prison gate from morning until noon. When Thea Shah finally came out, her first words shattered his last remaining illusions. "What happened to you?" Thea Shah frowned, her eyes full of disgust. Finlu held out the roses, his smile frozen on his face. "Thea, I'm here to pick you up." "Where's your car?" "I took a taxi." "Haven't your parents forgiven you yet?" Finlu said quietly. "They're still angry, but it's okay. I can support myself now, and I can support you too." Thea Shah looked at his worn suit, scuffed shoes, and tanned face, and her expression grew darker. "Fin, you promised me a good life." "I'll work hard." "What's the point of working hard?" Thea Shah's voice shrilled. "I suffered for 2 years in there, and now I have to live in a tiny apartment, take the bus, and eat takeout with you." Tears welled up in Finlu's eyes. "I waited for you for 2 years. You chose to do that." Those words sounded familiar. She'd said the exact same thing to Mrs. Liu. Finlu finally felt the sting of his own actions coming back to bite him. Thea Shah pushed the roses away. "You have no money, no company, no status. What do I have to gain by being with you?" Finlu's lips trembled. "But I lost everything for you." "Who told you to be so stupid?" My brother sent me the video of this exchange with the caption, "Today's electronic side dish." I watched it and felt nothing. It was exactly the ending I'd expected from Thea Shah's surprises at all. She quickly got together with someone else. I heard he was a divorced wealthy man she'd met online, who loved listening to her cry about her hard life. Finlu ran after them for a few steps, only to get a face full of exhaust fumes from their car. That night, Theoshia posted on her moments. Goodbye to the past, hello to a new life. The man who truly loves me is finally here. The photo was of a man's watch and a hotel window. Finlu liked the post. Then he unliked it. Then he liked it again. Finally, Theoshia blocked him. He probably finally realized he'd never been anything more than a way out for her. But it was too late. He came to see me when I was having a business meeting with Theodore G at the cafe downstairs from my office. Theodore G was the son of my father's friend. He'd started out as a lawyer, then taken over the family fund. He'd been the one who wrote my engagement termination agreement. Over the years, we'd worked together more and more, and eventually fallen in love. When Finlu burst into the cafe, the waiter thought he was a debt collector. He'd lost weight, his face was tanned and dull, and there were fine lines around his eyes. All the elegance of a wealthy young master had been worn away by life. Ivy Shen. He stood in front of my table, his voice hoarse. I looked up. Do you have an appointment? Finlu stared at me, stunned. Do we need appointments now? Theodore G set down his coffee cup and looked at him. She doesn't see people who aren't relevant to her work. Finlu turned to him, his eyes turning cold instantly. Who are you? Her husband. All the color drained from Finlu's face. You're married? I nodded, yes. He stared at my stomach. I was wearing a loose dress, but my pregnancy was starting to show. His voice trembled. You're pregnant? Yes. He looked like he'd been deeply wronged. How could you move on so quickly, Ivy Shen? I laughed. Finlu, did waiting for Thea Shah to get out of prison rot your brain? I ended my engagement, dated freely, got married legally, and had a normal pregnancy. What right do you have to question me? His eyes were red. I regret it. Congratulations. You've finally developed the basic human ability to reflect. Ivy, let's start over. I see Thea Shah for who she really is now. I know who truly cares about me. Theodore G let out a laugh. Finlu snapped at him. What are you laughing at? Theodore G said calmly, just that you're a little late. I added, late enough to be declared a historical landmark. Finlu looked at me miserably. I gave up everything for Thea Shah, and I ended up with nothing. That's called a bad investment. But I've been punished too. Your punishment is the result of your own choices. Don't come to me looking for sympathy or compensation. He took a step forward, reaching out to grab me. Theodore G stood up and stepped between us. The cafe security guard also walked over. Finlu froze. Once, people would step aside for him wherever he went. Now in a mall cafe he couldn't even get close to his ex-fiancée without being stopped by security. I looked at him, and suddenly remembered what he'd said in the garage that night. The Shen family has a strong legal team. You'll only serve a few years at most. Back then he'd spoken of my life so lightly, as if spending years in prison would be nothing more than a minor subplot in his and Thea Shia's love story. I picked up my glass of warm water and said calmly, Finlu, I have no obligation to fix your life. I never did, and I certainly don't now. His eyes turned red. Do you really not care about our past at all? I thought for a moment. I do. A flicker of hope lit up his eyes. I went on, out of respect for our past, I'm warning you to stay away from me. Pregnant women need to stay calm, and seeing you is bad for the baby. Theodore G couldn't help but turn his head and laugh. Finlu's face turned alternately green and white. Just then, another person walked into the cafe. He was leaning on a crutch, walking slowly. Finlu turned around, and when he saw who it was, he froze completely. It was Rowan Joe, the delivery rider Thea Shia had hit. After recovering, he'd stopped delivering food and joined my family's charity project, running the hotline for traffic accident victims. He'd come to drop off some documents today, and hadn't expected to walk in on this scene. When Rowan Joe saw Finlu, his face darkened. Finlu's lips moved. I'm sorry. Rowan Joe let out a cold laugh. That apology is 2.5 years too late. Finlu hung his head. I was so scared back then. Rowan Joe looked at him. You were scared, so you canceled the emergency call. You were scared, so you tried to make someone else take the blame. You were scared, so you let my mother almost get on her knees to beg for money outside the operating room. The cafe fell silent. With every word Rowan Joe said, Fin Lu's face grew paler. Mr. Lu, losing your company, your money, your woman, that's your problem. What I lost was a leg. Fin Lu had nothing to say. I told my assistant to help Rowan Joe sit down. Rowan Joe waved him off. No need. I'll leave once I've said what I came to say. He looked at Fin Lu. Don't come crying to Miss Shen anymore. The real victims don't have time to watch you act like a devoted lover. With that, he turned and left. Fin Lu stood there, his shoulders slumping. In that moment, the last trace of the arrogant young master he'd once been was gone forever. A phone ringing broke the silence. Fin Lu answered it, and his face quickly turned grim. The voice on the other end was loud enough for us to hear. Mr. Lu, your mother has given birth successfully. It's a healthy baby boy. Chairman Lu says you don't need to come to the family dinner. He's afraid you'll upset the new mother. Someone in the cafe couldn't hold back a snort. Fin Lu hung up the phone, his fingers trembling. I was a little surprised too. Mrs. Lu had actually had the second baby. Theodore G whispered to me, should we go? I nodded. But Fin Lu suddenly stepped in front of us. Ivy Shen, I have nothing left now. So, can you help me just this once? I looked at him, thinking how truly absurd he was. When he had money and power, he tried to make me take the blame for his crime. Now that he had nothing, he wanted me to bail him out. His worldview was simple. The universe revolved around him, and I was supposed to pay the bills. I asked, what do you want? His voice dropped. I want to go back to the Lu Corporation. I laughed. You should be asking your parents. They won't see me, then don't see them. But I'm the Lu family's eldest son. I reminded him. You have a little brother now. Fin Lu's face turned deathly pale. Theodore G took my hand and led me toward the door. Fin Lu called out from behind us, Ivy Shin, do you ever regret it? I stopped. Regret what? Regret not helping me back then. I turned to look at him. I do. His eyes lit up. I smiled. I regret not calling off the engagement sooner. ... Later, Fin Lu never did get back into the Lu Corporation. Mr. Lu amended the trust terms, leaving most of the family's assets to his newborn son and the charity foundation. Fin Lu only received a fixed monthly allowance. It was enough for an ordinary person to live on, but nowhere near enough to support the lavish lifestyle he'd once had. He tried starting his own business, tried live streaming, tried playing the victim. The titles of his live streams were dramatic. Rich heir falls from grace, waited 2 years for his true love. But the comment section was full of people who knew the truth. Is the blame-shifting brother live? Any more fiancé prison packages available? He streamed for 3 days before his account was reported and shut down. Thea Shea didn't have a good life either. The divorced wealthy man soon realized she did nothing but cry and spend money, and kicked her out. She went back to Fin Lu. They had a huge fight outside his tiny apartment. Thea Shea called him useless, and Fin Lu yelled that she'd ruined his life. When the neighbors called the police, they were still dredging up old grudges against each other. I heard Fin Lu ended up sitting in the police station hallway crying. My brother texted me, want to see the video? I replied, no, it's bad for the baby. When I was 6 months pregnant, Theodore G went with me to my prenatal checkup. Afterwards, we ran into Fin Lu outside the hospital. He was wearing a faded jacket and carrying a takeout bag. He'd been handsome once, but now, life had worn him down. His eyes were empty, and his face was etched with exhaustion. When he saw me, his eyes first went to my stomach, then to Theodore G's hand supporting my arm. Ivy. Theodore G frowned. I patted his hand. It's okay. Fin Lu stood a few feet away, his voice soft. If I hadn't tried to make you take the blame back then, would we be married now? No. He gave a bitter smile. You won't even give me a hypothetical? Fin Lu, it was never just about that one night. That night just made me see clearly that you have no moral compass. He hung his head and said nothing for a long time. I walked past him. His voice came from behind me. I'm sorry. This time, I didn't look back. A late apology is like expired yogurt opening, it will only ruin your day. Theodore G helped me into the car and fastened my seatbelt. He asked, "Are you okay?" I touched my stomach. "I'm fine." Outside the window, Fin Lu was still standing there. The wind billowed through his empty jacket. I rolled up the window. The car drove away from the hospital. From then on, his regrets were his, and my new life was mine. This story profoundly warns us. Love can never override law and conscience. Selfish sacrifice never wins true love. And sobriety and independence are the foundation of a fulfilling life. The fiancé, to cover up his first love's hit on crime, actually asked his fiancée to take the blame and go to prison, deluding himself that marriage would be compensation. The heroine refused to be trapped by false feelings. She calmly collected evidence, decisively called off the engagement, anonymously helped the victim with medical bills and seek justice, and finally found true love that respected her. The love-blinded scumbag lost all his wealth and status, and the first love ended up in prison. It teaches us never to abandon our bottom lines for anyone. All calculations to evade responsibility will eventually backfire.